welcome to the Overprepared DM. My name's Jen, and I'm here with Nick.
Hello.
And we have our lovely guest, Sumner, today.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. And
Hello.
Sumner is actually part of the same group that I am, Fateful Encounters, that I talk about every single podcast. But Sumner, tell them about you, because you're not just the person that I play games with.
That is my entire personality as a whole, so thank you. Yeah, my name is Sumner. I go by TummyNumNer on all social media. I play a whole bunch of D&D. I feel like that's mostly what I do. So we were joking, but I am like, am I? But yeah, I do a bunch of stuff. I do a ton of stuff on Twitch and soon to be YouTube and TikTok, hopefully.
Ooh.
But yeah, I'm Fateful Encounters is everything right now. So I'm super happy to have it that way.
Yeah, so we talk about overpreparedness on this podcast. And we have all been kind of stuck in that position of being a brand new DM, preparing for way too many things that you just don't need to prepare for anymore, knowing what you need, what you know now. And Nick always likes to start us off with the same question.
The same question. What's one thing that you did when you first started DMing, one thing you prepped for, that you do not do now, that you would go back in time and slap old you and say, don't do that, it's dumb, was one thing?
That is such a great question. So just as a quick preface, by the time I started DMing, which was like last year-ish, I had been playing D&D for about 4 or 5 years. My friends wrote me into it, and I got hooked. I was just, this is overly complicated. I have to know everything about it. And I wrote a one-shot. They really, really enjoyed it. And I had been building that world ever since. So I started DMing that world for real last year, and we just ended it like 2 months ago. And one thing I would really wish I could tell myself not to do was to plan so much on players and scenes that were cooler than the players. I had so many times where I had NPCs that was like, Cade, he's a dragon riding mercenary type thing. He has one arm, he has a grappling hook built in, and he's really cool. He can swing around ships, and it's like you're taking way too much focus away from how cool your players' characters are. They don't really care about your NPC, as they really, I mean, why would they? Because their backstories, they put so much love into it. Why are we taking attention away from that? Make it part of them, or make that character compliment how cool another player was. Like, they're cool because one of your players taught them how to do that. Like, make that the focus, not your characters. That was a huge thing. And that took me for a whiplash, because I had to rewrite a ton of stuff to make sure that it fit that motif. I thankfully caught on to it. I realized it wasn't getting the reception I expected, which I think was a bit ignorant of me. But yeah, that's definitely the number one thing. What about you guys?
That's a big theme. I'll kind of pile onto that. That's a big theme that I see a lot with new DMs, is like too much of their story, too much of their stuff goes into to the D&D campaign, which you think that's kind of what you're supposed to do, but you're supposed to prep it for the players, not for you. And one thing that I kind of did the same thing in my first Crit Chicks campaign. These NPCs, but what I did it on purpose, knowing that I was going to turn them into villains. Like, they were going to end up being like possessed by these otherworldly entities, and then become like these big massive villains that wreck the world. So had a purpose, and if you get caught doing that, you find yourself that you've done that. Hey, guess what? They're cool. Make them a cool villain. Now they have to fight them and kill them, and then you can wipe your slate clean of that stuff.
I had a really similar idea. So the whole campaign is started off with these two infernal cycle duel. There's the whole theme of it is adventuring parties. So there's one adventuring party that's really powerful, that's feuding against another one, and then this other group, this player group, comes in to disrupt that balance. That is the bastardized version of that story. But I put way too much focus on their feud. I thought that their impact on the existing story would have had that effect, but it had the opposite effect. It's like you can't spend 8+ months for a build-up if they're not going to be invested in that build-up the whole time.
Yeah.
And another thing, my answer to number 2 question is that if you have a cool idea and you want to build something up, build up is great. Build up is awesome. And it can be very, very rewarding. Do not wait. If you're going to build up this like, I'm going to drop a clue here. Oh, they didn't catch it. Good. I'm going to slap them with a plot twist in about 3-4 sessions. Make it next session. Make it fresh. Make it like, don't wait too long, or make it suspenseful where they kind of know a plot twist is coming, so they're waiting for it actively. Don't drop force. This isn't a novel. It's not written. It's not a medium that they can go back and look like, oh, this is all the times he said. No one gives a shit. Like, no one's gonna remember that unless you're on like a medium like YouTube or something where people do that. It makes no sense, and your players aren't going to thank you for it. It's just more for you. And again, that's focus away from your players. And it kind of just goes back into point 1. That was just,
yeah, definitely. Yeah. I find that I struggled with making my BBEGs or my BBEGs or the big bad evil guys. I attempted at least to make them cooler than the players, or to make them stronger than the players. And then, of course, as the players grew in strength, I'm like, well, this BBEG would get fucked up in like 2 hits. I need to make them cooler. And then that was all the focus when they really didn't care. And it's a matter of just giving them that light and shedding the light. But then also, if your cool BBEG that you've been working on forever gets shot down in 2 hits, you could always lie, but that's not the fun thing to do. You could just make that step 1. They could come back and be cooler and better and stronger. Or it could just be, you thought this was the villain, but there's actually more.
Yes.
And that also challenges you as a DM in your writing, especially if you thought that you had an ending. Now you don't.
Right.
Your campaign's longer.
Yeah. You can accidentally do that all the time. That's a great way of doing it, too. Like, I have a hard time balancing combat. So sometimes I will, like, halfway through combat, I'm like, okay, he died 2 rounds ago, but he's still kicking because I need this to last a little bit longer to have the effect I want, which is a little bit fair. And I know there's a lot of contention with that kind of fudging, but it's never not paid off for me. So I have a hard time agreeing with anyone that is against it so far. But having a villain or a thing that they are against be kind of powerful, but they overcome it without going down. And they're like, oh, that was tough, but not like impossible. Oh, there's 500 more of them? Oh, okay. There's the threat. That's rough. And like having that hit them that's what I did in my campaign, for instance, because I was fearful of that exact outcome.
And also it's empowering as a player to be like, oh, this is a badass that we have to deal with. Oh, we just kicked his ass. That's awesome.
Yeah,
you feel good about that. I mean, in the first Critchers campaign, I had this Oni that was gonna like terrorize the group for like he was just gonna keep coming back, but they polymorphed it into a freaking butterfly and put it in a bag of holding. And I was like, well, that.
I love D&D so much.
That's it. There's no coming back from that. That's it.
Oh man!
But there are moments like that make your players feel cool.
Yeah.
Because they feel like their spell choices mattered. Because at that point, their class mattered. The amount of what spells they prepared matter. All of their leveling choices matter, and maybe their item. Yeah. Because I had one where Dylan from Fateful Encounters, Jen was actually part of this group at the time. I was DMing kind of very much of a play test, but he cast what is that spell? I want to say it's Banishment, but it's a ritual spell where people cannot within like an insanely big distance, like 5 miles. The demons cannot come in or out. You can't. It's like plane shifting. You can't plane shift at all, which was my whole BBEG's shtick. And I wasn't gonna
remember this.
You remember? Yeah, it was epic, and I was like, damn it! Like, and so anyway, he cast it. They went to the whole thing. I had a beautiful like map prepared and like pillars and like I had terrain and things they could use around them. But none of that mattered because this spell, when my guy went in anyway, because it prevents them from doing it But if they do, they take a ludicrous amount of damage every single turn. So I had this whole thing where he was like struggling through these steps of pain, just you fell into my right into my trap, and he's just like pretending he's not instantly losing this battle.
Yes.
And the players were reeling from it. So it was a mistake, but it was also like it made the players feel cool.
Yeah.
So it there's two sides to that coin, and it's one of it. He tells people that story to this day.
Exactly.
Like, and those are the moments that make you as like, oh yeah, I DM'd that, I made that happen.
Yeah.
That's one of the most rewarding things about being a DM. You got to realize that it's not what you do, it's what your players do. And when your players are sitting around talking about putting an oni, making oni a butterfly, and putting it in a bag of holding, like years after that happened in real life, it's a cool feeling.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned something a minute ago about fudging as a DM.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to talk about, like, what are our opinions on fudging? How often do you do it? And how do you do it? I feel like Nick is a non-fudger, so I'll let you start, because I know that I am.
Yeah. I think Jen and I see eye to eye on this one. Yeah. And I've been at the short end of the stick on Nick's non-fudging, so...
I'm sorry.
No. We're both sorry.
Yeah.
I want to hear your thoughts.
It's one of those things where I can see why. I wouldn't hold it against anybody. I'm not one of those people like, it's you have to play it this way or you're wrong. But I definitely am not a fudger. The dice decide as much as when if players don't fudge. If I have a player who's fudging and I can tell, you can tell. I don't have any now, which is great, but you can tell. You're like, okay, all right, cool. Natural 20. Oh, guess what? Natural 20. You're not looking at your die, like, screw you. But if they're letting their dice decide the story, I want to let my dice decide the story as well. And if that means that I kill my wife's character again, sure, awesome.
Again?
Yeah. I've only killed my wife's characters. It's like, oops. So yeah, no, I don't like to fudge behind the screen, just because I want the dice. It's what D&D is. I want the dice to kind of drive the story in its own way.
I definitely understand that. I think for the most part, do not fudge unless it is for the sake of telling a better story that I kind of had planned. For instance, I could have them just one-shot everything that they touch, or I can say they have a little more health. They have, we need a little more out of this versus them just walking around golf clubbing their weapons and swinging everything to the walls and it dies. And it's kind of on me. And sometimes I'll do that, especially if I had a big plan for something and they do kill it too fast. I'm just like, all right, it's still alive, because I want to do at least one cool thing as a DM too, where it comes into like the DM being a player. I think it works especially well when I have min-maxy or power gamey type people, which we've discussed in the previous podcast. We've discussed what that is, and how it could be positive and how it could be negative. And it's more of like tailoring the way that I DM to the person and to make sure that they have fun. Because at the end of the day, I find that if something's too easy, it's not fun. If it's too hard, it's not fun. But if you're at least feeling like you're progressing, then there's hope. And you can give them hope and you can take away hope.
I like the way you put that. Yeah, I agree completely with everything you said. I mean, you and I have had extended conversations about this before for the same exact reason, because we can get into how D&D on like a very set time frame, like a stream, goes compared to a personal game of D&D. Those are two very different settings in my experience. But there are, and I don't fudge rolls like 99.9% of the time. I agree. I think dice tell the story. That's the foundation of the entire game. It's the one rule that has not changed in the entire RPG. Is dice tell the story. Is dice add this number to this number, that never changes. Why roll a die if you're going to fudge it? And that like, why roll a die? Like, sometimes I fudge roll die. I've fudged a die like roll like 3 times in a row. I'm like, why am I still rolling? Do I just want my players to hear me rolling? I think so. Where where I am just like, so the mage just casts a spell. Yeah, it hits. And do I want them to? But the times I do fudge, it's to tell a story. It's when you're a DM and you have this big bad creature that you've maybe spent, let's say, 1 or 2 sessions building up, and your players are actually scared. You've invoked an emotion of like terror or suspense or interest in any level, and you get to them and they're just a sandbag where they're just laying into him, doing 50 damage per turn because all of my players are min-maxers. Love you guys. And then my character goes and he goes, oh, and he raises his claw and he lunges forward and he misses, and then he lunges forward again and he misses, and he's got his teeth and he's got his tail, so he goes for his mouth, and he misses worse than the last time, and then his tail, and then it's like, okay, I want him to get 1 hit. He gets 4 hits, and then he's gonna get hit. He's gonna get demolished by these 5 assholes that went into my dungeon. He's gonna get 1 hit. I want to fudge it. I don't care. So like so that is the reason I fudge. Or like if it's a level 1 campaign, I never want to kill a level 1 player, like especially by something like, if it's stupidity, by all means. But if it's they stub their toe and they fail their death saving throws, that's not really fun. That's not about the players. So when especially if they have an epic backstory like Korok the Chainbreaker, he comes through, stubs his toe, and well, he's got
died.
Yeah, I know you're a militant captain, but that corner was a mahogany.
That's for you, pal.
Yeah, that's not very fun.
Well, what is the most ridiculous way that you have had a character die, or heard of a character dying, or have DM'd, or something like that? That's a curious question.
That's a good question. I don't know if I'm fortunate or unfortunate enough to say I have not experienced death very often. Outside of one shots, I think my most embarrassing death was when I was playing with in the Tomb of Horrors. You guys have probably heard of it, as Galvin, son of Rohan and hand of Lathander, a revered
Vic,
and
Vic
very
well.
And his wife / husband.
Yep, Vic, played by none other than Mr. Nick here.
Yes. So if you guys are unaware, though, we did do on Fateful Encounters, we did do Tomb of Horrors, where we had Nick as our guest, and it was a one-shot that turned into an entire month.
Yes.
Yeah. As any good one-shot does.
Of course.
Not that this was a good one-shot, but
at this point it was a mini-series.
Yeah, it was torture, IRL and RP. We all laugh jokingly about it. Yeah, it was a fun time. It was very memorable.
Great.
But
yes,
per the name of Tomb of Horrors, a lot of the traps were lethal, and Galvin got turned into a pancake. He got rezzed so many times. I think on the 3rd res, he was like, I'm just gonna start a farm.
And it was all by Vic. Vic was rezzing everybody.
Yes.
He just had a glazed look over his eye from being changed into like a pancakes, dust, and then just killed by bleeding out, and then being brought back to life against his will. Oh, good, I'm back here. Like, those are the most embarrassing deaths for sure. But my most memorable death was my very first game of D&D ever.
Okay.
And it wasn't me. It was caused by me. Which is a great way to say, hey guys, thanks for having me. I was a death cleric, which I was like, that's cool as hell. Oh, a dark elf? Cool. Let's crank up the edge on this one. Yeah. I was in a very narrow hallway, and we came across this huge monster down, and I was just learning how to play. They just lost a player, and they were like, hey, Sumner, you want to play? And I was like, sure. I do nothing, so sure. And I made this character. I made the spells, and I cast lightning from behind everybody, which I realized is how I learned how a line of sight spell works. So I cast lightning through everybody, and I did strike and do a ton of damage to the bad guy, but I killed 2 of my friends.
Yeah.
And they were such good sports about it. They were so they were so nice because one,
awesome.
I was allowed to come back, and then two, they just smiled and they were like,
That's great. We love that.
because it was like a campaign they were working like 4 or 5 episodes to get to, and we finally got there, and I'm like, hey guys.
Oh no.
And I was like, I'm just trying to hit the bad one.
So funny. I actually have a very similar story. I was DMing a brand new player game. It was a one shot for people who have never played before. It was kind of on purpose. Yeah, every single person. Okay. So it's just the same setup. It's very simple, and you do X and Y, and then you're done. It's just to teach you how to like get you a little role play, get you a little action, and get you rolling some dice. And I had a character who had ice knife in the game, and everyone was kind of melee. They ran up, they were fighting, and this caster from behind casts an ice knife right into the monster. Hits, great job. And then, as if you do know, ice knife explodes. It's basically shrapnel, and he killed one of the players, and through roleplay, they kicked him out of the party.
Through roleplay.
But I was like, you guys roleplay.
Yeah, we'll take that.
And he had a good time. It was all fun and games. He felt so bad.
Oh yeah, as you do.
Of course.
But that was one of the more interesting deaths that I have encountered firsthand.
That's so funny.
Oh man. But
I love on the Overprepared DM we have the Underprepared Players segment.
Yes, we do.
It was just fine. One way to prepare for players who don't know what they're doing. Like,
yes, I prepare much that I run games for people who have never played.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you're playing if you're DMing for a bunch of first-time players, your first piece of advice should be, hey, the skills on the sheet are alphabetical.
There you go.
And that's it. Because people will be like, where's perception? I don't know where perception is.
Right.
It's like, where the P's. It's in the P. Oh, never mind. You'll find it in 5 minutes.
That's actually great advice. Do you have any other small things like that? Because honestly, I've been playing since 2007, and I feel like I didn't know that.
Yeah. I have some things. Go ahead.
Keep going.
Well, I was gonna say, like, I actually always forget that. I always notice it, and I pretend like it's new. Because it's always been grouped up by wisdom, strength, charisma, and intelligence as long as I've ever played. And now all of a sudden it's alphabetical. Like that, act like that's helpful. I have to constantly say, oh, it's alphabetical. Great. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Can we do it by size of the word? Would be that way anyway.
Those experiences with character deaths were pretty positive. But what about as a DM? You're not always going to have someone who feels good about their character dying. So what's some advice that we can give new DMs if they're thinking of, running a game for a group? And what do they do if their players are upset? Of course, they're going to be upset. They should.
Right.
Well, they don't have to be. If they're like me and they're non-committal and they're like, kill me for story purposes, those are my favorite kinds of people. But
I do too. Yeah, because you can make it really cool. You can build it up, and they'll be with you the whole way.
But what do you think, Nick? No, you're fine.
Oh man, that's hard. It's really hard. It wasn't a permadeath, but I did kill, in my first Crit Chicks campaign, I did kill one of my, a great character. Her name was Luelle. She was a tabaxi. She had 6 fingers on each paw. She talked the way she talked was different. She was such a good character. And, Danny, her player, loved her so much. And I killed her with a, I forgot the ability is from one of the white abilities where just if it drops you to 0 HP, you're dead. And she as soon as I was like, she goes to 0 HP, she doesn't fall unconscious. She's gone.
Yeah.
She asked, can I please leave the table? And she walked away,
Aww.
So in
How
that
long
moment,
was she playing?
oh, she'd been playing for years at that point.
With this character?
Well, with that character, about a year at that point.
That's
the same
commitment.
campaign.
The same campaign, yeah. So what I would have done if they weren't able to resurrect her, because I have a mechanic for resurrections, they don't always work. But if they weren't able to resurrect her, I would have, and she's a good player. She would have been down for this. But if someone's not talked to him, be like, hey, either you can create a secondary NPC that you can play, that you can go along with the party to rescue their soul and bring them back from wherever they are, or if it really means that much to you, we can just bring them back. But let's consider what this does to the story. Let's talk about how this is going to affect the other characters, not the players. Players are different than characters. You have to understand that.
Yeah.
How's this going to affect the other characters? And Luelle, the character's name, her death was, I mean, the whole party was like, okay, we're gonna burn everything down now. Like, we're done.
Yeah.
We're just destroying everything, and that would have been a cool way to advance the story. But she ended up getting resurrected. And one thing I do, if you want to take it, you can. Anybody can who's listening, even you too. If you do something like that where they get resurrected, I always give the player an option to let their character die. And I always make it hard for the character to say no to death. So Luelle's mom had died, and Luelle's mom was waiting there for her, like on the beach in their home, and she was like, hey, you can come with me, and it's fine, it's okay. And I could see her from it. She was like, oh no, Luelle might go.
Yeah. It gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, my head's tingly. I got ASMR tingles.
Awesome. Yeah. Death is as little as I've experienced. That is a really good idea. Yeah. As little death as I've experienced, it's my favorite topic to discuss because there's so much storytelling potential, like what you just said. Like, I've never heard anyone do that before. Did you role play it, or was it?
Yeah,
or was it?
It was role played. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. That's so innovative. That's so because one, death is if your players. Let me phrase it this way. You are playing just as much as your players are, arguably more. So you're with them. You're not killing a character. You're losing a part of the story as much as they are. You don't want your players to die. No one does. If you're a DM that wants your players to die, you're probably playing Tomb of Horrors. And I respect that, but it's not. I don't recommend it. But when they do, it's important that they feel it. If they have felt that destruction, that level of that piece is missing from them, that ripped away from their story, first off, fucking congratulations for being able to feel the opposite of that happiness that you would otherwise have, because you can't have both in any situation ever in life. So if you're able to have that level of grief, that means you guys were experiencing like life to its best. And like that is so beautiful on so many different levels for me. So if you're able to give like as much life and attention to that part of the story, that death deserves so much, like so much of the same. So like I love what you did with that. Like being able to like give your players a chance to resurrect them. Like, oh wait, I had heard of someone. There's some druids on the other side of the continent. It's gonna be one hell of a ride, but let's preserve this thing and let's see if we can bring them back and make it kind of like not a huge build up thing, but an arc, and see if it's possible. Make it difficult, and they shouldn't be the same when they come back. Make it a cool story element, make it cool for the players, and make your players feel like they did it. And then they will come back stronger. And plus, like characters, like role play, how their characters, you don't know your character until, just the same way you don't know you until you experience grief, very real grief. You don't know yourself, and characters are the same. You're like, no, like that viral primal, like either depression, rage, however you process such an extreme emotion. It's awesome, and you're there for the whole ride. I don't want to say don't get upset. Let your upsetness, like let your storytelling drive it and recover from it, because it's going to be so satisfying when you do. That's my 2 cents on that.
Well, it's a great
I hope I
2
didn't interrupt you.
No, it's a great 2 cents, because there is an entire, like, I want to say campaign or organization that works through mental health recovery through D&D. And that goes back to kind of what we talked about in mental health last session when we chatted. We talked a lot about mental health and D&D, which was very cool. So we mentioned one thing was that we kind of need to touch on a little bit more, but retconning. Not necessarily character death. It could be, but let's talk about retconning. How to do it, when to do it, and when to say no.
Okay.
I say no.
Okay. Give me an example.
I mean, so there are things that I'll retcon in combat, like, oh, I forgot to cast my bonus action. Two not rounds, but 2 turns have gone by. Yeah, go ahead, cast your bonus action, your sanctuary, whatever you're doing. That's fine. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not worried about stuff like that. Mechanical stuff, whatever. Oh, I forgot to add this modifier on. Sure, yeah, we can do that. Or a big thing that I've retconned before is 10 sessions into a campaign. Hey, I love my character, but I don't like my class. Okay, let's just swap it. Let's just change it all out, let's find a cool way to RP it. We'll talk about it, that's fine. But decisions they've made or things that I've forgotten, I won't throw back in there. I'll be like, okay, I'll work this in a different way somewhere down the line, which will happen to you at some point. Trust me. You'll be DMing, you'll be like, oh, the end of the session, I have this whole page of notes I wanted to go over with them I forgot. Well, I just move forward with it. But that's just me. I mean, everyone's different.
Yeah.
What about you, Jen?
Retconning is a little, I'm very inconsistent with when I retcon. I will be very honest. I actually disagree with Nick in that I do not allow retconning of mechanics, because I don't look at my PC's character sheets because I trust them to know what it is, because I'm doing everything else. And that's something that I do talk about in session 0, as we talked about. Like, I'm like, hey, you're in charge. If you're dead, you're dead, you let me know. I'm not going to be looking for all of these numbers. And if you 2 turns ago forgot to use your bonus action, no, you cannot use it now. That's me, though. I'm just like, well, you kind of forgot. And it's just to say that your character didn't do it. Like, just because you can. Sure. And that's fine. But I also, I don't really retcon things that happen in the story either. If I forget to do something, or if I wanted something to go differently, I just bite it. I just, bite the bullet, and I figure it out as we go along. What my least favorite thing about playing as a player, if I'm entered into a scene and they say, okay, so let's go back a scene and redo this because that's not how I want it, and it kind of throws me out of the situation. And I try to just, if I make a mistake, I made that mistake. And if I expect that of my players during battle, they should expect that of me during roleplay as well.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
Well, just figure it out later. For instance, if I forgot to mention that they found a key somewhere, I'm going to it's suddenly somewhere else. Sometimes it's simple like that, but sometimes it's absolutely not. But that's just my opinion, personally.
Yeah. I agree on all points. There's it just depends on this. It depends on the scope. There's a difference between quick pivots and quick changes, and actual retcons, story-based retcons. Well, guess what? Your story's different now. Granted, I haven't DM'd a lot of full-size campaigns. I've done a bunch of one-shots. I've done and then my big world that I've done, which is named Austera. Nobody asked, but here it is. My most common retcon that I'm tempted to do but never do is when I am getting, as honestly, it's managing the monster manual. When I'm looking at a monster stat sheet and I'm like, okay, cool, there's her attacks, AC's right here, HP's that, cool, perfect. Let's do a bunch of attacks, and then 75% through combat, I realized that they were resistant through all of that damage the whole time. So guess what? They're not resistant to that damage. That's my retcon. But that's not communicated to the players. That's not, I don't want to, retcons are by nature not immersive. So by saying, oh yeah, you can't do that, or you can't do that, no, I mean, get out of here, especially during combat, because that's usually when retcons happen the most, because it's kind of quick pace. Wait, I wouldn't have done that if this would have happened. That's too bad because you did it. I had a point with this. Oh, I had a point. It was so good.
I have done that so much on this podcast. I have begun talking, and then I'm like, I had somewhere to go with this. But I do hear what you're saying. I hear you saying that as long as the story is progressed and the players aren't taken out of it, you can retcon in your brain as much as you want.
Because Nick mentioned like bonus actions and stuff. Every time during combat, my biggest priority is getting it like moving. So I always say like, Jen's turn. Nick, you're next. Jen, do you have any bonus actions you want to use? Nope. Cool. Nick, moving on. Yay, player 3, you're next. And then moving on like that. So like I'm communicating it. So if they say, hey, I want to use this, I'm like, I literally asked you, or we're moving on. You can get it next time. Because if we focus on that, we will be making combat slower, and that is never going to happen on my table. So because I feel like my biggest fear, I've had it happen a couple times. Maybe it's because I was part of a group that had 7 players, 8 people total, including DM, and combat was a nightmare. So we were just on our phones, and every time it was our turn, like, oh wait, what? Whose turn? What happened? Right. So like, God forbid a retcon happened. No, absolutely not. I just get them out of there, scare them, beat the hell out of them, win, loot, moving on. 3 hours. So,
what do you think about formula? What do you think about combat pacing, Nick?
Combat pacing?
Yeah. I feel like that's kind of where we're segueing into.
Yeah, and combat pacing. That is, I am okay with players taking their time on their turn before like things happen in their turn. If they're like, because sometimes the stakes are really high, and something can happen on the turn before theirs. We're like, oh, my plan just went out the window. Or if I do this wrong, my player's twin sisters are gonna die. I'm okay with them taking their time, and really chewing on what's gonna happen next. But once dice start rolling, it's like, all right, come on, let's go. Let's get the mechanical part out of the way. I will tell you a narrative that sounds pretty cool. Hopefully, sometimes I don't, because you
always feel like that too.
I can only
it's
explain
never
them.
true.
I'm sure they think it's great.
A monk punching a dragon so many times.
My players keep coming back. I don't know why.
But I kind of leave that up to the player's discretion, and my players are good enough where they can like feel each other out, and if it's going too slow, they know when to pick it up or when to keep going or when to slow it down. But I've had combat pacing just come to a screeching halt in some points where I've killed an important NPC where all of a sudden the whole party is role playing their whole turns, and it's not just fighting. They're
I love that,
trying to talk shit to the bad guys who are still there and all of this stuff. And I thought it was awesome when that happened.
That's different. That's awesome though.
I would
That's that
say
nice combination.
That is very awesome. And it reminded me of a tip that we can probably give new DMs is how to pick up the pace with DMing a combat. I find that it is, and it's just personal opinion, I find that it is very helpful to kind of restate what you saw. Like, it is your turn. You just saw this happen. This is going on. So-and-so just got slashed, and now he's pointing at you. This is your moment. Like, what do you do in this moment? Versus saying, it's your turn. Have you been paying attention?
Yes. Took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly right. I really can't emphasize that enough.
That's what I have noticed has been the most helpful with keeping people engaged. Because combat, I mean, if some people absolutely love combat and number crunching, me, I can hardly do basic subtraction and addition. So I gotta keep it moving and got my calculator right next to me, and I just gotta go. Like, hey, you have like Nick's Sumner just flew off the canyon, and the BBEG is staring directly at you, and so now you have like a direct motive.
Yeah.
Like, you see this and this just happened. I think that's a very helpful thing to practice. You're not going to be good at it right up front. I definitely was not, especially because that means that I have to pay attention to everything going on.
I have severe ADHD, and
but
I suffer from very severe ADHD, so this has been such a great listening exercise. Being a DM, being able to like balance everything, but also actively listening and incorporating what you hear. You know, that active listening. You know, that we all have to be as human beings. But those micro descriptions when you're starting their turn keeps that pace up, and it also keeps the imagery up, because combat is so much faster in the world. Really slow in real life. So being able to, he just stabbed your friend. What do you do about it? Like, that didn't happen 5 turns ago. That happened 2 seconds ago.
Yes.
So being able to, I do this. That changes what I was going to do. Telling your players, hey, have your turn ready by the time I get to you. So keeping up a formula was what's helpful for me. So if it's helpful for any new DMs, it does take time to get into. So don't beat yourself up if it's hard to like get. Just keep trying. Practice makes perfect. Literally, just do it. So just like getting in the habit of like telling your players, have your turn ready. Having the initiative order visible to your players if you do not tell them who's next. Like saying, here's the initiative order. So if you see Brandon going, then you know you're next. Josh. Like that's what they should know. That's what they should see. The players do have a little bit of responsibility, but if you want to keep things going, saying, hey, it's your turn, really quickly, you're next. I'm looking at you. Hey, I see you're on your phone. Next, and then micro description, go for it. When they're done, any bonus actions? No, moving on. And that formula has always worked for me. Combat is mega fast. I can get combat's usually like an hour. I can usually get it down to like 45, 30 minutes, depending on the difficulty. And it's quick. You're not waiting forever for your turn. It's like, oh my God, it's my turn already. And that's a good feeling. But yeah, Jen described that better than me. Micro descriptions.
Oh, you nailed it.
You nailed it. That was great.
Because that's a very good point. Is you got to remember that a round takes 6 seconds in play, like in the play world. Mm-hmm. So and it gives you a good opportunity to what they're talking about, like either to remind the players what's going on or bring in something that's freaking hilarious.
Right.
So if someone falls off a cliff, 20 feet, lands prone next to somebody, and then 6 turns later, that player's up, you'd be like, so this is what you've seen. You're fighting this bad guy. Your friend just falls out of nowhere next to you on the ground.
Yep.
What do you do? Like,
right.
Now there's this prone person here. This happened just now. So it's good reminder for what's been happening, and it does keep players on track, and it can be funny sometimes. So
and you can be funny, and you can add as your DM moment, your storytelling moment, to add something in there.
Yes,
your friend just fell to the ground, and you just saw a torch fall onto the hay where that has started a small fire.
That's true.
Like, things are happening throughout combat. Combat moves very quickly. I'm 29 and I play D&D 3 times a week. I haven't been in a lot of combat, but I imagine it's fast. So like, it's really so you know what I mean? Like, so I want things to be happening. I want it to be thrilling. I want it to be dangerous for everyone involved. And like when they're out of it, they're like, whoo! Like, I want them to feel that, like, holy crap, that was like a lot. Like, and it's satisfying when they get out alive.
Yeah. And the reason I started doing that as a DM was when I was overprepared, and I had a in-person group of 9 to 10 people, always fluctuating. I've talked about this group, and they're always on their phones, and I took it personally. And at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's not them being disrespectful to you. It's the fact that it may be going a little slow. That's also not your fault. It could be the player's fault. And it could be a matter of, maybe making sure that they know the spells. Some beneficial resources I have found are spell cards. And they sell them on Amazon. They sell them at Barnes & Noble. They're all over the place. And you can buy the class, and it has their spell cards. So they can have a physical piece of cardboard, stockboard, whatever they're called, and read what their spell does right in front of their face. Sometimes character sheets are overwhelming. And I found I bought those for that group. I bought them for Christmas. And some of the spellcasters... all of them were spellcasters to an extent, minus one of them. Poor guy had the shortest turns, and everyone else had 2 minutes of thinking of what to do.
Yep. Was he a rogue? One attack?
He was a gnoll, a half gnoll, which we worked together for homebrew. and he was a blood hunter, which we were
A
allowing.
blood hunter.
So
Gotcha.
he had a few turns, and he had a few moves, but then he was also just in general a very active individual, was looking at everything, and was just as fast as I was, which was great. But also, the spellcasters would be on their phones, and I'm like, hey, you should maybe look at the spells you have.
You got some homework.
Yeah, homework to do. But sometimes I will like provide possible suggestions through roleplay, not just out of character. For instance, I would say, he looks like he's coming to charge you. He looks like he's coming to directly attack you. And I know that they have like defense spells. So that maybe I'll force them into a defensive position, and I'll limit the amount of spells that they can choose from. They could directly attack with a fireball or whatever, but that's running towards you, so that radius might not be as far away as you think it is.
Yeah, exactly. They're not just going to the grocery store for food. They're going to a specific aisle for a certain type of item. They know kind of what they're looking for now. They're not looking for prestidigitation. They're looking for... So they're looking for... I'm about to get hurt and I'm squishy. So
I need some bark skin now.
bark skin. No.
That's something I definitely do too, and that does help. Where you like after the bad guy's turn, what does it look like they're gonna do next? Are they gonna run away? Who are they turning towards? Are they pulling out a spell book, healing potion? Like, give the players an idea of what's happening next, so they can act accordingly, and they're not caught off guard when suddenly they're being banished to another realm.
That's a good point. One thing I've done as well, and also to your point of like with the thing you had where you had like role play happening through combat, I love that. I love it. If it's just number crunching, that's not fun for me in the slightest, and I can't imagine it is for a ton of players. But like Jen said, it is for some players, and you should respect that. But having your actions, like give an action, which you can use for spells or attacks, depending on your character, a bonus action, and then you have a reaction, and then your movement. I add a free verbal action that you can use at any point in time during the round. If you remind them that they can use it, like, oh, can I shout? Is that an action to like tell them what to do? Absolutely not. That's your verbal action. Shout, like be your characters throughout combat. It brings it to a new level, and they're able to communicate. And believe it or not, it actually does move combat. That's not a word. Combat along.
There you go.
Yeah, it's a very aggressive wombat.
Combat wombat.
Oh, jeez.
I'm gonna homebrew a monster now.
Oh no! That's how homebrew starts, everyone. Welcome to D&D. But if you're DMing, you're most likely, if you're a new DM, first off, congratulations. You've made the plunge, and you've probably started a new group. You're killing it. You're doing the Lord's work.
You might feel like you're going to throw up after
also new.
You might feel like you're going to throw up before your first session. Just push through it. You'll be fine. It's fun. Do it.
Yeah. You're going to do it once, and it's going to be like, oh, okay. Well, that's not too bad. Or you have a billion ideas, and you don't know how to put them all in one session, which is the best case scenario.
Yeah. And in that case, if like your players are focusing on one of those many ideas, then roll with it. Let them do it. That means it's less work for you later because you already have all those other things planned.
Yep. Yeah. You just got more content.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very good point. Yeah. Let the players do work for you. It's nice.
Yeah. The players do your work. That's another thing, by the way. Back to your original question, and we're back to the what would I tell myself when I first started DMing? It was you have these players. You probably have about 4 or 5 players, 3 of whom I bet wrote essays for you.
Yeah.
Why did you write a world? They wrote it for you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Just piece it together. You're done. Get the monster manual out, make a world. We're done here. They probably have names and NPCs and everything. Just make this, just stat them up. You know, like that's one thing I wish I did.
Yeah, that's let their work shine, and then they'll be invested in that world. And to kind of bring it back to the whole like death thing that I did with all of my character deaths, you use those in those moments, like the player who died, or the character who died, and she saw her mom on the other side. She wrote that her mom was killed before her in, tragic, hero backstory. And it's a really good way to flex, not work out, but flex your improv muscle. Because I didn't write for her dying. It's something that I wouldn't recommend it. She's like, oh, I want you to die so I can show you this cool thing I did. Don't do that. But
right.
use that backstory stuff to improv those cool moments.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely a good way to say goodbye to a character. I did that with my wife's character, whom I brutally murdered. I had, it was cool. It was a failed ritual, a failed resurrection ritual. The dice didn't work out. And I had to improv on the spot what happened. And it was a very, everybody was crying at the table. Everybody gave hugs afterwards. It was one of the coolest D&D moments I've ever had. Where
that's very cool.
Yeah, so use that work and
use it. Yeah.
One, it'll get your characters tied to your story.
Mm-hmm. Which you need. It'll get so that once the characters are tied to the story, it will tie the players to the story. And if you brutally murder that character, the player's going to want to come back and create a new character.
Definitely.
And have that impact on the world.
Yeah. Make the death make sense. Don't be disrespectful to the character, of course. But yeah, exactly.
It sounds like I love killing characters. And,
I don't.
You did put emphasis on brutal. I
mean, it's his wife.
I'm teasing, of course, because you obviously killed it. But I mean, sorry, you knocked it out of the park.
Thank you. Either one, it's
fine. We have talked about quite a bit in our last 50 minutes together. We talked about kind of waiting on good moments and not waiting on good moments. We talked about making BBEGs cooler than the players or not. We talked about fudging. We talked about character deaths, ret-conning, and combat engagement. Sumner, is there anything that you want the DMs of the world who are brand new or ones who are overprepared and are looking to not be, is there anything that you just genuinely want someone to know or don't do as a DM?
I always think about this, and it always just comes down to just do it. Don't over-prepare. You're better off not prepared than over-prepared. And I am anal with notes. Take it from me. I'll tell you the servant's backstory, but it's about your players. Use what they give you. They give you the best tools possible. It's like they're staring at you in the face this whole time. Make your players feel cool. And just do it.
Definitely.
Like that.
Well, this was a wonderful podcast. Again, you guys, my name is Jen. You can find me at Jen's Online on everything you can possibly think of. And
I'm Nick. You can find me at EmoAasimar on Twitter and Instagram, and Southwest Gaming Society on Twitch on Wednesday nights.
And I'm Sumner. I'm with Faithful Encounters, a D&D stream on Twitch, along with Jen here. And I'm also on, I'm TummyNumNer. TummyNumNer on all social media.
Definitely. And we will be dropping all of those links so you can find TummyNumNer anywhere. So drop it down in that description if you are interested in finding him anywhere he might be. And I appreciate you guys for hanging out today. Be safe. Hope you had a good drive to work. And we will see you next Sunday.
Kill your characters.
Don't do it!